Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. In Yemen, airstrikes by the government coalition have killed 7 people in the northern province of Al-Jawf. Al-Houthi spokesperson said 2 children are among those killed in the strikes on residential area. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has visited the Diamid Bhasha Dam site to review the development. Speaking in Chitral, Khan said the project will help overcome energy crisis and create thousands of jobs amid coronavirus-affected economy. Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa and Inter-Services Intelligence DG Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid also accompanied the Premier. The dam, with a power generation capacity of 4,500 megawatts, will provide over 18 billion units per annum to the national grid. It will have a gross water storage capacity of 8.1 million acre-feet to irrigate around 1.23 million acres of additional land. Detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. We start a news bulletin from Yemen, where airstrikes by the government coalition have killed 7 people in the northern province of Al-Jawf. A Houthi spokesperson said airstrikes hit a residential area. He said 2 children were also among those killed. There was no immediate comment from the coalition, which has been battling the Houthi movement for more than 5 years. On Monday, the coalition said it destroyed 2 Houthi ballistic missiles and 6 drones launched from Yemen to target Saudi Arabia. In Israel, thousands of people have protested against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in front of his residence in Jerusalem. The protesters demanded Netanyahu's resignation over his government's poor handling of COVID-19 pandemic and alleged corruption. Police arrested 50 people and fired water cannons to disperse the protesters. Protesters blocked roads and set fire to trash bins in the city center.
And what's wrong with the country right now is our Prime Minister. And I'm not talking about the allegations, I'm not talking about anything, it's just everything is falling apart. We're talking about every sector of the country is just falling apart because this guy is a very bad manager.
Netanyahu faces corruption trial on charges of bribery, breach of trust and fraud. Now moving on, in Brazil, 1,300 more people have died from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, raising the toll to over 74,000. While the US reported 827 more fatalities with 61,000 new cases. The death toll has now surpassed 136,000 and total infections are more than 3.4 million. Worldwide, the death count has risen to almost 578,000 with more than 13.2 million cases. More in this report.
Many cities around the world have reimposed COVID-19 lockdowns to counter a resurgence of infections. As the World Health Organization warned, there were no shortcuts out of the pandemic. In the Americas, Mexico has proposed to the US an extension to a ban on non-essential travel by land over their shared border for another 30 days. As the US states of Alabama, Florida, and North Carolina reported record increases in daily deaths. Top infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci warned the actual number of nationwide cases could be much more.
First question is this just an increase because of testing versus an increase? Well, there's no doubt that it's both. I mean, obviously, the more you test, the more you're going to pick up. So increase in testing is going to give you increases. But there is no doubt that there are more infections. And we know that because the percentage of cases of the cases that are tested that are positive is increasing. Therefore, unequivocally, you're seeing truly more new cases.
Doctors in France have reported what they believe to be the first proven case of COVID-19 being passed on from a pregnant woman to her baby in the womb. Paris will also make it compulsory for people to wear masks in shops and public spaces from next month. And Spain's populous Catalonia region made a fresh attempt to put an area of 160,000 people under lockdown to stem a local surge.
The important thing here is to act to stop the outbreak, and anything that takes us away from loses focus. The priority is to act to contain, to control the outbreak. This is primarily the responsibility of Generalitat of Catalonia, and the Spanish government is there to lend a hand in everything that is asked of us. I emphasize, in everything that is asked of us. I must say that the climate of collaboration and the relationship is very fluid.
Meanwhile, in Asia, India's coronavirus cases, the third highest in the world, have passed 900,000 with more than 22,000 known deaths. 133 million people in the northern state of Bihar and the IT hub of Bangalore have entered a new lockdown. South Korea's new coronavirus cases stayed below 40 for the second day in a row, but imported cases continue to rise. However, China is further easing restrictions on domestic tourism after reporting no new local cases of COVID-19 in 9 days.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's COVID-19 death toll has reached nearly 5,400 with 67 more fatalities in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry said 2,165 positive cases were reported in the last 24 hours, bringing the total to over 255,000. It said more than 2,100 people recovered from the virus in the past day, raising the tally to over 172,000. The ministry said over 77,000 cases are active in the country. It said the province of Sindh reported the most new infections with 1,151 cases. Punjab province reported 553 infections, while the capital Islamabad registered 113 new cases. The Taliban have released another 11 Afghan soldiers as part of a peace deal signed in Doha. In a statement, the group's spokesperson Sohail Shaheen said the soldiers were freed from 3 different provinces. The two sides are required to free a total of 6,000 prisoners under the pact. Meanwhile, the Taliban have once again accused the Afghan government and the US of violating the pact. In a statement, it said the US and Afghan forces continue to carry out airstrikes in non-combat areas. China says it will impose retaliatory sanctions against the US after President Donald Trump signed an executive order to end Hong Kong's special status. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said the semi-autonomous territory is China's internal affair and no foreign country has the right to interfere. Earlier, Trump also signed Hong Kong Autonomy Act that revokes license expectations for islands export and special treatment for territories' passport holders. While the executive order sanctions individuals responsible for undermining Hong Kong democratic processes, Trump said the territory will now be treated the same as mainland China without any special privileges.
Today I signed legislation and an executive order to hold China accountable for its oppressive actions against the people of Hong Kong. The Hong Kong Autonomy Act, which I signed this afternoon, passed unanimously through Congress. This law gives my administration powerful new tools to hold responsible the individuals and the entities involved in extinguishing Hong Kong's freedom.
China has accused Japan of prejudice over its 2020 defense white paper, saying it was full of false information. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said Beijing has recorded protests with Tokyo over the issue. Zhao said Beijing prefers the path of peaceful development and partnership with neighbors. The spokesperson said Beijing remains unswerving in upholding its sovereignty and security and development interests. He said any attempt to discredit China will be in vain.
China has stated its solemn position on this issue before. Japan's 2020 defense white paper is full of prejudice against China and false information. It tries to incite the so-called China threat. Though named a white paper, it is actually a compromising material exposing the dark mindset of a certain Japanese forces. China has made solemn representations to Japan.
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and US President Donald Trump have agreed to work closely to ensure lasting stability in Libya. According to the Turkish presidency, the two leaders spoke over the phone and discussed bilateral ties and a trade target of $100 billion. Ankara has previously said Washington needs to play a more active role in the Libyan conflict. And this comes after Libya's eastern-based parliament approved a motion authorizing neighboring Egypt to directly intervene militarily in the country's war. The legislature backs renegade commander Khalifa Haftar, who has launched a campaign to seize Tripoli from the GNA. Turkey says it has killed 3 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in airstrikes during Operation Claw Tiger in northern Iraq. The National Defense Ministry said the military carried operations backed by air power in the Haftanin region. The ministry said Turkey will continue to destroy weapon caches and shelters used by the terrorists. It said over 400 Kurdish militants have been killed in northern Iraq over the past 5 months. State media said PKK militants often use northern Iraq to plan cross-border attacks in Turkey. Ankara holds the PKK responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in a 30-year conflict. In North Macedonia, voting has begun in a parliamentary election which will decide the pace of the country's bid for EU membership. In the polls, governing pro-EU Social Democrats SDSM are locked in a close race with the main opposition Nationalist Party. The vote was originally scheduled for April but was postponed due to COVID-19 outbreak. Voters are arriving at the polling stations wearing mandatory masks. A recent survey predicted a narrow victory for SDSM, while another indicated a narrow win for opposition party. Former Prime Minister Zoran Zaev placed the country on the path towards EU membership by agreeing to add North to its name. The compromise resulted in North Macedonia becoming the 30th member of NATO, and EU agreed to allow accession talks. In Belarus, hundreds protested in the capital Minsk after 2 main rivals of President Alexander Lukashenko were barred from running in the election. The Central Election Commission refused to register Viktor Babariko because of a criminal case against him. Valery Tspakalo was also rejected after signatures on a supporting petition were nullified. President Lukashenko faces his strongest opposition in years as frustration mounts over the economy, human rights, and his playing down of the coronavirus pandemic. Police arrested scores of people in an effort to quell anti-government protests.
We witnessed how people were just walking in front of us. There were about 9 of them when riot police and people in civilian clothes ran out of the prisoner transport vehicle and detained them indiscriminately. They beat them too. I'm absolutely against everything that's going on. They just detain people and carry them away in the prisoner transport vehicle.
Hundreds of protesters took to the streets in Brasilia calling for impeachment of President Jair Bolsonaro. They were protesting against the president's handling of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic in Brazil. Brazil is the second worst hit country by the global coronavirus pandemic after the US. Bolsonaro himself tested positive for the novel coronavirus last week. Over 74,000 people have so far died from the virus in the country. Flash floods and landslides have killed 16 people and displaced hundreds in the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. Indonesia's disaster mitigation agency spokesperson said 23 people are still missing in the North Luwu district. A local official said heavy rains triggered the flooding and caused 3 rivers to overflow, affecting over 4,000 residents of 6 sub-districts. The official said the provincial road is covered in mud and the landslides have blocked off access to the main command post and the affected areas. Indonesia frequently suffers from floods and landslides, particularly during the rainy season. Earlier in January, flooding killed 66 people in the capital city of Jakarta. In the Czech Republic, a train driver has been killed and 35 others injured in the country's second fatal train collision this month. Officials said a passenger train crashed into a stationary freight train near CZECH Broad, east of the capital Prague. Fire services said 2 of those injured were in a critical condition and 8 were seriously injured. The Regional Rescue Service said the number of injured passengers could rise as the operation is underway. Railway officials said a major track linking the capital with the eastern part of the country will remain closed for a day. Earlier on 7th of July, 2 people were killed and 24 injured in a train accident in northwest of the country near the border with Germany. In Egypt, 17 people have been injured after a major fire broke out due to oil leak from a pipeline next to a busy highway in a Cairo suburb. In a statement, the Petroleum Ministry said passing by cars ignited the crude leaking from the pipe. The pipeline's valves were immediately closed in the area and the fire was brought under the control. The state prosecutor said he has dispatched a team to investigate the reasons behind the leakage. The crude pipeline runs from the Red Sea oil port of Shukair to the refinery complex of Mostarad in Greater Cairo. Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan have failed to reach an agreement at a new round of talks to regulate the flow of water from the Blue Nile Dam. The Ethiopian Foreign Ministry said an agreement was not reached due to excessive demands from Egypt and Sudan. It did not elaborate, but said Ethiopia was willing to show flexibility as talks continue. The African Union launched its mediation effort 2 weeks ago to end the deadlock over the filling and operation of the dam. The dam is the centerpiece in Ethiopia's bid to become Africa's biggest power exporter, but has sparked concerns in Cairo that Egypt's already scarce supplies of Nile waters would further be restricted. Banksy has returned to the London Underground with a piece encouraging people to wear a face mask. A video posted on his Instagram page shows a man believed to be the enigmatic artist disguised as a professional cleaner. Banksy can be seen ordering passengers away as he gets to work, stenciling rats around the inside of the carriage. The work, called "If You Don't Mask, You Don't Get," features a number of rats in pandemic-inspired poses and wearing face masks. In a statement, Transport for London said the art was removed some days ago in line with its strict anti-graffiti policy. It offered Banksy the chance to do a new version of his message for customers in a suitable location. US biotech company Moderna's experimental vaccine for COVID-19 is showing encouraging signs in early-stage human trials. Researchers say the vaccine provoked immune responses in all 45 healthy volunteers without any serious unwanted reactions. The results were published in New England Journal of Medicine. Researchers say 2 doses resulted in the development of high levels of virus-killing antibodies. They said antibodies expected the average level seen in people who had recovered from COVID-19. The report said over half of the volunteers reported mild or moderate reactions. Reactions such as fatigue, headache, chills or muscle aches were more likely after the second dose. Moderna was the first company to start human testing of a vaccine on 16th of March, 66 days after the genetic sequence of the virus was released. Archaeologists have unearthed remains of the residences of Aztec ruler Quetzalcoatl and Spanish conqueror Hernan Cortes in Mexico City. Investigators discovered basalt slabs as well as pre-Hispanic ceramics that were reportedly part of Quetzalcoatl Palace. Cortes arrived in Mexico in 1518 on a mission to explore the region for Spanish colonization. He reportedly resided in the palace shortly after entering Tenochtitlan.
The house where Hernan Cortes resided was built with basalt blocks and tezontal blocks. These materials are the product of the destruction of the Quetzalcoatl Palace. We know that the palace of Quetzalcoatl was there because of various documents, such as the description given by the Spanish conquerors.
Europe's second highest court has annulled an EU order for appeal to pay $15 billion in back taxes to Irish government. In its ruling, the court said the European Commission couldn't prove that the Irish government gave illegal tax benefits to Apple. The parties now have 2 months to decide if they want to appeal the latest ruling and take it to the EU's highest tribunal. The European Commission's defeat may weaken or delay its pending cases against IKEA's and Nike's deals with the Netherlands. Major U.S. public transit systems have asked the Capitol Hill for up to $36 billion bailout to keep municipal buses and trains running. In a letter to the U.S. Senate, top transit agencies said they will be forced to make difficult decisions without additional federal assistance. The transit systems are seeking emergency coronavirus funding on the top of the $25 billion bailout approved in March. New York's Metropolitan Transportation Authority said it needs another $3.9 billion to get through 2020. Private U.S. bus companies need $15 billion, while passenger railroad Amtrak asked for a further $1.475 billion earlier in May. Meanwhile, U.S. airports have also put in a requirement of another $10 billion in government assistance. Urban transit systems have been devastated by the novel coronavirus pandemic amid a steep decline in commuting and tourism. European stock markets are trading higher as fresh vaccine hopes lift investors' sentiments. Investors are betting on successful vaccine trial by Moderna as it raises hope of economic activities revival. CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 1% higher. Frankfurt's DAX has gained nearly 1%, while CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 0.5% higher. In Asia, Nikkei 225 closed over 1.5% higher. Shanghai Composite lost over 1.5%. Seoul's Kospi Index traded nearly 1% higher, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index traded flat. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price has gained over 1% over global demand recovery. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.